Hey everyone, welcome back. You are listening to 한국어천재 on TBS EFM 101.3 in Seoul and the surrounding area. And I am here with the one, the only Chef Matthew. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
It's so good to have you back.
It's always great to be back.
And you know, we have been having such a blast the past couple days. The past couple weeks, we kind of took a tour around Korea, checking out all the different regions and all the different kind of foods they have here. But now we're getting on to one of my favorite times of year, which is the Chuseok holiday.
That's right. So after a month of traveling all over the country, we are, in a sense, heading back home for the holidays.
Yep, I love it. And you guys, like Chuseok, it kind of brings the same feeling as what Thanksgiving is, for Americans.
Essentially the same thing, right? Because they're both these harvest festivals.
Yeah.
They are these mid-autumn celebrations of kind of a bountiful harvest. You're giving thanks. Here in Korea, you have the added element of paying honor and paying respects to your ancestors.
Yeah.
But by and large, a lot of the same things happen. You eat a lot in the middle of the day and get very sleepy towards the end of it.
Yep.
Families gather. It's a big to-do. It's incredibly stressful, but at the same time, it's also the best time of the year.
Exactly. And that's why, as an expat living abroad, Chuseok is both a great time and a sad time for me because I'm all alone. There's no one here. And so for me, I like to spend my Chuseok usually enjoying a lot of the traditional foods they have, and they'll serve them at restaurants around Seoul.
Sure.
So for any of our expats who are living here, you also can enjoy a lot of the traditional Chuseok foods, even if you aren't going to, say, a traditional family household for this time.
Right. And also, I guess a couple more details in terms of Chuseok this year. So this year, it's going to be a 5-day holiday. So you basically have from Wednesday, the 30th of September to Sunday, the 4th of October. And Chuseok Day proper is going to be that Thursday. So,
Yeah. And I will be working here at TBS EFM, so make sure you guys all tune in and hang out with me so I'm not all alone here in the studio. But, it's great that we're kind of covering this because I feel like there's so much that goes into Chuseok. But I kind of want to quiz our listeners here and see what their base knowledge is of Chuseok and the kind of traditions that go with it. So I have a little quiz for you guys. We'll take a listen and then I want to hear your answers. Let's take a listen to it.
다음 중 추석 풍습이 아닌 것을 고르시오. 1번 윷놀이 2번 세배 3번 성묘 4번 차례.
All right, we're going to be testing a little cultural knowledge here of everyone. Even Blair, when he was on the show, struggled a little with one of these here. So,
interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's certain things that kind of, they sounded similar in terms of description, but they weren't quite the same. And so let's just go through here. It says, choose the one that's not one of the Chuseok traditions. So we've got 4 things we listed. What's the first one?
So the first one is 윷놀이. 윷놀이. And the translation I have in the script is 윷 game, which doesn't tell our listeners very much. Essentially, it's a Korean board game. You play with these 4 sticks, and they're 2-sided, and you essentially kind of use them as dice.
Yep.
To kind of navigate around the board. And let me tell you, it is so much fun. The last time my extended family got together, I think my voice was hoarse the next day because of all the yelling. There was, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but there was a startling amount of money being wagered on these games. And it just kept escalating too. I think we played at least half a dozen games by the end of the night. One game is not a short game.
No, that's true.
Yeah, so we were up until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think it wasn't me, but there was someone in our family who was very unhappy the next day with how much money he or she lost.
That's so funny because I feel like these are two, things that there's the 윷놀이 game, and then also I hear a lot about. Have you played 투호 as well? Is that a game? 투호 is the one where you throw in the stick, the little arrows into the bucket.
No, that's not one that our family is a 윷놀이 family.
Your team 윷놀이. Okay, so my experience, I have been and spent a Chuseok many a time with some Korean families, and I have played 윷놀이. I have played 투호. I played that game with the little cards, I don't know if I can say the name on air, but where you kind of throw it down here. Yep, I've played all these games, and I have to say 윷놀이 is probably a favorite.
So much fun.
Oh, it's a fun one. I feel like we actually just gave the answer on that
Well,
one.
no, I mean, okay, let's put it this way. To all of our listeners, all four of these things are holiday activities, but only 3 of them are specific to Chuseok.
That's true. That is a good way of putting that here. So we've got the yunori, or as the translation says, yutgame.
Game.
And then the second one here is 세배. And what 세배 is, we would describe it as kind of doing a bow to your like elders, to the adults here. It's a sign of respect that
Sure.
you do, right? And so I've never actually done 세배 before, but
I don't imagine they do a lot of sebe in Wisconsin.
no, they do not. There's not. I don't know why that made me laugh so much. So we have the 세배 here. What was that third one?
So third one, you have 성묘, 성묘, and that's visiting your ancestral graves.
Yeah.
So 묘 is the suffix that which means grave, and this is where you go and the whole ritual behind visiting the grave, clearing it off, and then giving offerings.
Exactly. And then finally, our last one here is 차례, and that's like the ancestral rites, I think we translate it as. Yeah.
And then there's a whole process to it. There's this entire setup that you do. It's a very elaborate display of foods.
Yeah.
It's in a very specific order as well. And the types of food that you put up, you have everything from Korean pears, you have some dried fish there, and they all have separate meanings, not only in the individual items, but in the way they're arranged.
Yeah, a lot of it kind of depends on your family. I heard there's like a base kind of what most people get, and then each family kind of brings their own little spin to it. And so,
yeah, there are even entire companies that you can hire to do these for you, and they'll do it like all the way. You know, a lot of families, you know, to do it right, to do it like traditional to the letter, it's a lot of work. So if you want to do it very precisely, exactly the way it should be, a lot of families now opt to hire a professional company.
go big or go home. I mean, why not? So I'm going to give you guys just like we'll give you a little minute here to think through that. Number 1, 윷놀이. Number 2, 세배. Number 3, 성묘. And number 4, 차례. Tell us which one does not go along with the Chuseok holiday. These are all holiday related, but which one is not Chuseok related here. But so anyway, we're kind of, and while we're on the Chuseok topic, I feel like the biggest thing to go through is the food because there's just a sheer amount of it.
And so today is going to be Chuseok dishes part 1 because there just aren't enough dishes. Plus, we always go over time anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we might be doing Chuseok dishes well into November, but we'll try to get through them.
I love it. So this first one here, actually, I have to say is probably one of my favorites.
I think this one's most people's favorite, and it's so tasty. I mean, the flavors are so accessible, right? Like, there's nothing here that no one dislikes, and it's one of those things too that's unlike a lot of the other Chuseok dishes, it's hard to find outside of this time period, at least when you're making it at home.
Correct.
And that's 송편. 송편.
송편, you guys, it's a type of 떡.
Yes.
And it's quite funny because when I took the 사회 통합 program, we got to try all the different 떡s. They brought a bunch into our class here. And it was amazing to see how everyone gravitated to the 송편 because as, you know, Matt said, it's just delicious.
Right.
I'm not the biggest 떡 fan, but they put like just the sweetest of honey and seeds in there, and it's just it tastes so good.
Right, because a lot of duck, right? Some can be very heavy, some can be very kind of dry. Some, you know, the texture runs the gamut. I feel like 송편, the type of duck that they have there, it's very middle of the road. It's firm and it's chewy, not too sticky. And then the filling, a lot of times it can be very dry or it can be very, very sweet. And this one again, right in the middle. Like I think it is a crowd pleaser, and it's as far of a crowd pleaser I think as you can get as far as duck.
And visually gorgeous. They're usually like, I want to say top 3 colors, white, like a dark green, and then this pinky one. Is
That's
the one,
correct. Yeah, I'd say that those are top 3. Once in a while, you'll find ones that are dyed orange or yellow with chija, but the top 3 are going to be white, pink, and green, which is oftentimes colored with suk. Otherwise known as mugwort. It's dried. It's an herb that's normally harvested in the springtime. But then, if you see a green duck, most likely it has suk in it.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Suk is like the biggest, hottest thing here in Korea right now. I see suk lattes everywhere, and I'm just like, I'm not a fan of suk. Not a fan of suk.
It's a subtle flavor. I think the color is a lot more intense than the flavor is.
For sure.
It's very dark green.
I think for me, it's because I inhaled a lot of soup powder, and then all of a sudden I was like, all right, I don't enjoy the soup anymore.
Right.
So yeah, we have the songpyeon here, and I feel like that's one of the biggest staples of Korean like Chuseok foods that you'll see here. But there's actually a lot more that can cover the table as well. And I feel like this second one that we have here too, this is probably the one that I want to cover the most because there's just so many types of it.
And we're talking about chun here, right? So chun, it's a style of fried food, and I think I might have mentioned this before. So chun can refer to kind of like a wide gamut of dishes. So you have things like the chun that you eat during this time of the year, which are essentially little bite-sized pieces of fish, meat, vegetables that are dredged in flour, then egg, and then pan-fried. But you also have chun like kimchi-jeon and like 빈대떡, which are pancake style.
Yeah.
So basically, the gist is chun refers to any kind of dish that is based on flour and cooked in oil. So that's the common thread that links the two somewhat disparate seeming styles of dishes. But the type of chun that you most likely are to find on a Chuseok table is the former, where again, those bite-sized pieces. And what's great is that you have such a wide variety of different foods on the table.
Yeah.
So like in our family, I think normally we'll do like some kind of fish. So like 동태, 명태, 대구. So it's usually a firm white fish. And then you'll do, oftentimes a wide variety of vegetables. So 호박전 is a popular one. It's essentially, it's a squash, most similar to a zucchini.
It's green, yeah. I remember the first time.
It's a sweeter version of zucchini, basically.
Yeah.
They're cut into little rounds. The way we do in our family is actually we take a little ring mold, we pop out the center, and then we stuff the center with wanja, essentially meatball.
Oh my God! Why you guys are leveling up Chuseok meals?
Yeah.
This is why you have everyone. You need to at least have one chef in your family here because that's where you get the good stuff. These brilliant ideas. That sounds delicious.
Yeah, and what's great is just that. Back up. Not everyone finds this great. It depends if you actually enjoy making these or not. Luckily, both my wife really and I enjoy what you call 부쳐, 부쳐ingjeon.
Yeah.
So to 부쳐 is to kind of, I guess, griddle.
Yeah.
And the thing is that because they're bite-sized, you have to do a lot of them. So it takes a long time. So you kind of get this assembly line going. And then you have them out basically all day long. And the best part of chun is that they're actually a little better when they're at room temperature, not straight out of the pan.
So it's okay to let them sit for a while, kind of simmer in those griddle juices. Is griddle juice is a good description? I'm not quite sure if I got you guys
I think
there.
we have to take a vote on that one. I think we're a little. The room might be split.
Do you know? For me, I like those bite-sized ones. I do honestly. But my favorite type of chun has to be more of those pancake type chun. For me, my absolute favorite is the 굴전. 굴전 is like the what do we call 굴? Is that oysters?
Oysters,
yeah. The English no good today. And so I love having these little bits of oysters in there just mixed in, and usually they put some like pa in there as well. And I just love tepa, and like it just I get it. It reminds me of potato pancakes that I grew up with as a kid.
No, I get because you got the crispy, the oily, and then but it's also kind of like creamy in the center as well.
Yeah, where for me it's like the little bite-sized ones, while they're delicious, they remind me a lot of the deep fried food I would get at the state fair.
More like fritters. That's oftentimes how they're translated. They're not exactly the same thing, but I think it gets the point across.
Yeah,
fritters is not the worst term.
So basically, you'll see both of them here at Chuseok. I guess it just depends on your family which you guys prefer.
Right. So you have, I guess, like 4 broad classifications of chun, right? So you have the pancake style.
Yeah.
And then you have the kind of like the basic style, which you have like that bite-sized thing that's dredged and then griddled. And then you have a stuffed style of chun. So that could either be like gochujang, which you take like a green pepper, like cut it in half, and then you stuff the inside with, chopped meat or chopped fish, and then you griddle the whole thing.
Yeah.
Was it 깻잎전 is one of my favorite. You're not 깻잎 fan either?
Nope, you get a nice little hit from me. That's not going in my mouth.
One of these days.
Matt's gonna slip me some 깻잎 one day and just try to force feed me 깻잎.
I got this all the time when I started liking things like 깻잎 growing up. It's like, 어른이 됐네. You're an adult now. The day you start liking these more challenging foods is the day you become an adult in Korea.
Hey, you know what? what? I took the quiz. We all took it together with the genies, and I got the 아재맛 for my level. So it's just the getnik that I'm
But the
not
thing
at
is
yet.
that a lot of ajes also have kind of like chodding immat as well. So they like really, you have like the aje balanced out with like liking things that are like really, really sweet as well. But
so
speaking of quiz, why don't we check in with our genies and see how they did?
We've got 현지채 here that's saying 두 번이요. 아닌가? 뭐 4번인가? And Vroomy as well says 2번. It's the second one. Yeah, 2번이에요. Oh, not 2번, 2번. And then Tris back says, I first saw the youth game being played by Shiny like a few years ago, and I still don't understand how it works. And then I feel like a lot of people here are looking at 2번 as the answer here, and I feel like you all are very smart because 2번, this one, the second one here, the 두 번째 거는 보통 설날 때 we have it on 설날, the Lunar New Year. That's what it is there. And the Lunar New Year is when they usually do the full bow to your elders or to the adults, and oftentimes you'll get 세뱃돈 in response from it.
Right. So the youngsters, they'll get a little bit of money, and in return, what they'll do is they'll sit there patiently while the grown-ups tell them like what they should be doing for the next year, and it's a way to kind of kick off the kind of like a period of rebirth, where it's like, okay, like you did some good things in the past, but you can improve on these things. Essentially, it's kind of like it's an annual report. Essentially, it's a evaluation period.
It's your report card for the year, you guys. Let's go through it. And so you are all right. Number 2 is not there. 윷놀이, however, and 성묘, and of course 차례 are all things that are a big part of Chuseok. And 현진채 here says, 솔직히 런쥔이 제일 좋아요. 여러분 다들 런쥔하세요. Oh my God, I cannot forget. I love these plays on words for our fellow DJ, because it's the chun and then 런쥔. Oh my gosh, get out all of you. No 아재 jokes here today. I'm gonna have to tell him one of these days when we're passing. I'll have to share that one with him. But so we've got your 송편, we've got your 런쥔, and we've got more things as well, though. I have to say, like, for me, when it comes to a lot of the foods that we get here, it's a lot about the meat.
Right.
Just similar to Thanksgiving, I think of meat. But the meats here are very different. For Chuseok, what do they usually have as their main staple?
So I think what a lot of people are looking at when they're looking at like a kind of a big centerpiece, the big crowd pleaser, it has to be 갈비찜, right? It's essentially their braised beef short ribs.
Oh,
and if you're familiar with Korean food, then you know 갈비. And that's oftentimes it's sliced thin and then grilled. What we're talking about when we're talking about 갈비찜, take that same cut of meat, but you don't slice it thin. You keep it in big blocks of meat. And then you simmer it in like a 간장 in a soy sauce based braising liquid for hours until it just falls apart in your mouth. You have things like potatoes, carrots, chestnuts, uneng nuts in there, and it all comes together in this like salty, sweet, savory dish that I think it's just one of those things that everyone, if you eat beef, this is one of the most delicious expressions of beef.
It really is. Like, for the way Matt describes it, he does such a great job of describing food, because it really is the type that just, it melts in your mouth like butter, and it just peels off the bone and peels away from itself because it's been soaking in that for so long. It oftentimes reminds me of stews that my grandparents would make. My grandma would often make beef stew, and it was often very similar to this in a way that she would just let it slow roast all day in these juices with some carrots and with some potatoes. Here, a lot of the times, like you said, it's usually got thick things of potatoes in it as well. It's just a nice hearty dish here.
Yeah, and so while the liquid itself, it's not quite as thick as a stew. You're right. It has that kind of rib, was a stick to your ribs quality. Very, very hearty, and it's a whole process. Essentially, you start with good quality ribs. You want to soak them, and here's a big difference. I think when a lot of Westerners approach Korean cuisine, they make the mistake that you try to do with Western cuisine, and that's to kind of sear your meat and fry it in oil. You don't want to be doing that. As a matter of fact, you want to be doing the opposite. You want to lighten your meat as possible. And that basically necessitates it soaking it in cold water for a couple of hours, preferably overnight. What you're doing is you're getting a lot of that, the kind of myoglobin and a lot of those, the blood and all the impurities out from there. So you just end up with a lot cleaner stock. And then what you want to do is you want to basically create the seasoning base. It's got 간장, soy sauce. It's got 생강, ginger, garlic in there. It's got sweetened rice wine as well. And you just essentially simmer in this, and then as you go, so the meat's going to take the longest. It's going to take about 3 to 5 hours, depending on how gently you're simmering it. And then essentially you're going to add your other ingredients in the order of how long they take to cook. So you're going to start with things like your pyogo mushrooms and your techu, because those are aromatics, right? The longer they simmer in there, they're going to add a lot more flavor. And then second hour, you're going to add things like your mu, your radish, your carrots, your chestnuts. These are harder vegetables that are going to take a little bit longer. And, but even if they start to overcook a little bit, they'll hold together. And then finally, you'll add things like pine nuts and then like roasted onion nuts at the very end. And then I tell you, this is the thing that disappears off the table first.
Yeah, you guys, like I'm staring at Matt right now as I imagined back to all the galbijims I've eaten over the past Chuseoks that I've lived here in Korea. And I have to say that while I love songpyeon and I do love cheon, they are so delicious and they add that nice bits of flavor throughout the meal. The galbijim is like the star of the show. It's just, it's out of the, and you can actually get galbijim at other times of the year as well. So don't be concerned that you'll never be able to try this unless it's Chuseok. It is totally possible. It's that home cooked like 손맛 sort of thing that you get from your mom or whoever's making it there. So now you guys, I am good and hungry and this is the perfect time to cut us off here because my goodness, if we go on any longer, I think I'm going to start drooling here, Matt. But thank you so much for sharing all this with us today.
No problem. We'll be back next week with part 2.
Oh, you guys stay tuned then for next week. And thank you so much for everyone who is tuned in today.